In this video, we're going to tell the Toledano and Chan story through the 3 watches they've released so far. Phil is over here waiting to come out. Justin Hast is going to come in and gate crash us. Don't go anywhere if you have any interest in this incredible watch, in this incredible OG, and I can't show you that one. Hello and welcome to Time+Tide. How are you guys?
You asking us? Was that rhetorical?
No.
I'm splendid. Very good, thank you.
Introduce yourselves, please.
Philip Toledano, half of the non-Chan part of Toledano Chan.
And I'm the Chan.
I'm neither. I'm Justin Hast, and I've arrived here to see these guys. Had no idea that we were filming today, but here we are.
The purpose of this video, you know Toledano and Chan. You know what's going on with this watch. You've seen this around Instagram. You've seen it on YouTube. And there's a lot of questions that people have. Every time we post about this brand, we're going to answer as many of them as we can today. And we're going to tell the story so far, which began a ripe old, how long ago?
Last May. We've been an established historical brand since May 2025. 2024. Sorry, jet lag.
So in internet years, that makes you about 10 years old.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah. But look, it is a short story, and yet there is quite a lot to tell. We have some watches, some show and tell, and we do have our beloved advisor and consultant and, how shall we say, just lurker, loiterer, interloper.
What's that word? Who's that person that hangs around in bushes outside your house? Peeping Tom.
Peeping Tom.
The local Peeping Tom.
Horological Peeping Tom.
Horological Peeping Tom.
He will not abide our restraining orders. He's here again.
Not yet convicted, but anyway, there we go.
No, Justin's here because, honestly, Justin is, I would say, atypical of the sort of, your response, your enthusiastic response to this brand is representative of many who are watching. And I just brought you along for the ride because it's always fun.
Yeah.
Always fun.
Yeah.
Always fun to have Hast in the salad bowl.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, I have not met the boys either. So this is the first time we've met in person. Like many of us out there, we have comms online. And we send cheeky pics on a Friday night, but we've never met. We've never met in person. So this is the first damn time we're meeting.
Yeah.
And if anything, maybe I could be that buffer and ask some of the questions that you guys might have about the watches and the people behind them.
And look, the most extraordinary fact about you two is that the first time I met these two gentlemen, this is my number one most extraordinary fact, because it is ridiculous, is that when I met you two for the first time, you were meeting each other for the first time in real life.
Second time. Second time today.
Second time you guys have met?
Ever.
It's like a Tinder date gone wrong.
It is.
It's just
You've gone horribly right though.
Exactly.
I mean, how many Tinder dates do result in a glorious watch brand?
They've had triplets.
Yeah.
And more on the way.
We're so proud. We're proud parents.
We may or may not get to what's on the way, but they've had triplets. And so the first time was in Geneva at a panel.
Yeah.
And now it's in London. This is crazy. I am the common denominator in your meeting.
Yeah. We would basically never meet unless you were here. I think that's the way it has to go.
That's a beautiful thing. And look, this video is off to a warm and cozy start, but let's get serious. This watch, the B1, lauded by many as a watch that defined 2024. Justin, am I being too kind?
No, I think that's spot on. It encapsulated in many ways the shift that went on in the industry last year from a design perspective predominantly. But no, it was absolutely everywhere. And look, stone dial, asymmetric case, integrated, interesting bracelet, something completely fresh. I think you guys sort of spearheaded a movement of others. I'm thinking Anoma and Denison and who came this year. Just a real shift in approachable, fresh design, fast-moving design in the best possible way.
All of which we saw 4 years ago when we started the brand.
When we started
talking.
Right.
So this is all entirely accidental. And it's a gloriously beautiful accident.
So to be legal about this, May was the signing of the papers last year. That was the beginning of the company, but there was a longer story before that.
Yes.
Okay. How long?
4 years, right? 3 or 4 years?
End of 2020.
Yeah.
End of 2020, beginning of 2021, yeah.
And this is a point I made on this panel in Geneva, was that it looked opportunistic to appear at the perfect time with this design. And yet the story you'd pitched many, many years into the future with an expectation that this might somehow hit. That's an amazing thing, isn't it?
Who sent the first message? Because you guys did connect online to start with. And what did that message, you still have that message now, what did it say?
Well, there were some nudes involved, of course.
And you got a response for the very first time.
I was
Normally
like,
you
wow,
send them and you don't get a response.
I was very impressed, of course. I mean, well,
That was for the Viva Basado.
I have
the
Viva
podcast
Basado
and-
clothing brand and podcast. And Alfred, you had bought some.
Did you order a
Or a
jumpsuit?
sweater.
Or a
No,
sweater.
I couldn't. I can't.
Not that
You could pull it off, man.
Yeah.
Too short.
It can be adjusted. Yeah, you emailed me about Viva Bastardo,
Yeah.
and then somehow we started talking about watches.
Then you realize I was a watch designer.
Yeah, and then that's right, and I was like, oh, and then I pounced on you.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't let you go.
And Alfred, who did you, just as a question for those, tell us who you worked for before. Where were you working? Were you employed before or were you not? And who did you
I
work for before?
worked at Undone before. Undone
Okay.
of Hong Kong
Yeah, yeah,
before. And before that, at Studio Divine, a Swiss design studio that primarily do watch design.
Okay, cool. And were you employed at that moment in time when you guys were short talking?
Yeah,
Not
I
to
was
sort
at
of put you into any hot water.
I was at Undone.
He was on the street.
You were undone.
He was-
You were undone. Okay. And then
And
how
you were
far?
done with
How many weeks, months, years into those comms did then you get to the point where you're like, hey, maybe we should think about doing something together?
I feel like it was. I mean, I was.
You both are showing some defensive body language.
Yeah,
just
it's true.
for the
it's
record,
true.
Your Honor.
Okay, you were like this. I feel like it was. Pretty soon because I had been ruminating. I was deep into 70s stuff at that point, and I started talking to you about this idea of like
brutalist architecture.
Yeah,
how that can translate
Right.
into a watch. Not how can a watch be brutalist.
I mean, all of our initial when we took the next step in our relationship and moved to WhatsApp, which is a serious commitment.
And official on Facebook.
Yeah, it's
presumably,
official.
as well.
It's official.
It's
When you move to
complicated.
WhatsApp, all of our initial kind of exchanges were brutalist buildings. Pictures.
Yeah.
And look, we did not anticipate that shift, that paradigm shift that happened last year. I mean, it was just, we were really honestly making something that we, just for us, that we loved, that we thought was interesting and beautiful and different. And there was like a 15 to 23%, I ran the numbers, hope that maybe we'd sell some if we were lucky.
No, if we go back to the beginning, I don't think we were going to make a watch. We weren't going to sell a watch, and we weren't going to build a brand. I think that came.
That all came later.
That came
Yeah,
really late.
yeah.
That came really late.
Where were the inspirations? Were there models out there? Was there?
Oh, for sure. I mean, look, all of the Midas, of
Yes.
course.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, the Audemars Piguet, the remaster
reissued,
thing.
yeah.
Sadly, I had been obsessed with that watch for years. I had been looking for it for years. I didn't realize they only made 6. So I felt like a buffoon. But anyway, that kind of stuff. I mean, look, there's so many, the general concept of an integrated bracelet watch that was a continuous concept, that idea was something that really grabbed us right away. Because we felt like that was a design language that had been kind of abandoned.
And if we talk about, let's go back into the present day, tomorrow night, which means that the B-roll that you'll be seeing very shortly will be in the future.
And it is an honor to have Mr. Phil Toledano and Alfred Chan from Toledano and Chan here. Give them a round of applause. They've come from New York.
So Time and Tide, we've done maybe 5 events in our short history here at the Discovery Studio in Oxford Circus. And this one was we started out with what? We're thinking...
An intimate tea party.
Intimate tea party, maybe 30.
Bicky's out.
So Bicky's out. So we went from the tea party model to, we're like, oh, we've actually got 60. And then, maybe we should just put on some champagne because we have 90. And then when we got to 100, I was like, well, we've got to make it a cocktail dress code because that tends to happen in London when you get a bigger crowd.
Is it not black tie? It's not black tie. is it?
Topper. Monocles.
Top hat.
We
Top hat and tails. It's Ascot. It's Ascot red.
Ascot. Ascot. We're going to go
Monocles,
Ascot.
sword canes.
130 people are coming in to the
Sabres.
studio tomorrow night. And that is because somehow that combination of design-led watches, and again, at an accessible, I would say, accessible point for what you're getting in terms of this style of watch and this quality of watch. We have 130 in here tomorrow. And to me, it feels more, the tone of this event tomorrow feels more, it's like art world frenzy, as in VIPs are now actively reaching out saying, we've heard about this event. This is not that common in the watch world for a watch event to have this kind of art feel to it. What is happening here? Why is there this extra sense of, to me, there's something around the paradigm, like there's a cross paradigm between watches and art.
I am a buyer. I'm a collector, spend far too much on watches, and I speak to so many other collectors every day, as we all do. And the one thing they want more than anything is something fresh, something new. Something genuinely fresh. Now, a lot of those brands that we love tend to look back, and that's really tricky. We've got that little bit of irk in us when it's like a reissue. It's like, I love it, but it's not the original.
The issue I have with reissues is they make me want the original.
Yeah, which often are not feasible, as we touched on with that AP. And I was the same with the 1921 at Vacheron, just this tiny little thing, and they made so few, I could never wear it. Yeah. But this is entirely fresh, and that's why it's captured the imagination as it has. And the fact that you're able to make it approachable price point wise, probably based on the fact that you were able to keep the costs at a place that were, made it acceptable. But that's huge. That's absolutely huge. So for me, it's the fact that it's fresh and genuinely new. Looking at back, you haven't got any history to look back on.
I mean, look, we really appreciate what you say, and it's really lovely to hear that. I mean, there is no question there are influences in there, but I think the trick with influences is to absorb them, and then to put this in a very unlovely way, excrete it out in a way that's new. Oh, you want to wait?
No, that's okay. Just let it go.
It's a very fine line, isn't it? It's a very fine line between inspiration and something fresh. And I feel like you guys have tread that line very nicely.
Thank you.
And when you get to the heart of it, like it's good. It's all a framing conversation about the art world and the watch world. But to me, it's exemplified by the fact that I saw this and jumped on it. I want in on this brand. And there was a sense that when I have it, I'll scratch the itch. I'll be done. I've got a Toledano and Chan. They're not wildly changing the envelope, so I should be good for a stretch until you do something different. And yet, when we went from the lapis lazuli B1 to the mother of pearl B1.2, it suddenly dawned on me the collectability and it's like, do I just need one Rothko? That is truly a sense of that's what I think gets to the heart of the art in this design, is that it is absolutely not enough to just have this one, because the way that you have sort of innovated within envelope gives you a strong need for a second. And it is more like an artist who, once you start collecting, instead of saying, well, I have that now, I'm going to move on to, another artist, you actually get a taste for it.
Well, I think for us in particular,
I'm a cautionary tale.
Here's what we've done, is we've created the beginnings of a language. And so what's exciting for us is we want to continue to explore that language, to continue to add words and phrases to that language. So when we did the 1.2, how do you develop the language in a way that's surprising, beautiful, and impactful, but yet somehow also minimal? So that's why we thought, well, the crystal, because with the one, you have this negative space, right? And so we thought, well, here's a space we can fill. We can continue that conversation, that design language. You can add words to that conversation with sapphire, not with steel, sapphire glass. So that's what we did. And I think, I really love how it looks. We have now we're on the crystal thing. We have many ideas up our sleeves about what comes next.
Did you ever have anything on the dial in the early designs?
You mean in terms of branding?
Yeah, was it a logo?
Well, we were for a very brief moment. We were called Lin. I'm not, because I think
it was line. It was a line.
I think it was Hungarian, because Marcel Breuer is Hungarian, so I think it was line in Hungarian. But then when I Googled it the other day, apparently it's not line in Hungarian. But anyway, we put it on the dial.
It's like the danger of getting a tattoo in another language and not really actually what it means until some guy on holiday points and says, "Do you know what you've got written on your ass?"
have regretted that Japanese transtat forever.
Because that to me is one of the key design aspects, is the unbranded aspect.
Well, because I think one of the funnily enough, a lot of people say, "Oh, you have to put a brand on the dial," but I think that they're missing the point, because the brand is the watch, the brand is the shape, is the design language. That's the brand. But also, I think for us, when we started out with the lapis, one of the issues you have with stone dials is there's always stuff on the dials, so you can't see the stone. So why? It's a frame. And why not show all the beauty of what you have to see?
So to move through the story, and we will get to pricing and price later, we start with the B1, which was launched what month?
May
in 2024. And this was at launch $3,500 US. And as 4,000 US. And this has a lapis dial, and it has this sheared off sort of case profile that's so unusual. And then we move to the B1.2, which is a Tahitian mother of pearl dial with this faceted, thick crystal, which I love for the fact that when I saw the tank normal for the first time with this massive Mr. Magoo glasses crystal and the way it's warping and bending light and distorting things, it gave me that same thrill, but on another level. Because even standing here, it's popping me in the eye.
The video, whoever did the video for you guys on the slow motion,
oh my God.
takes you on this journey. It's like it's like
exactly.
Inception and just layer on layer on layer. It's like shit.
It is.
No
It's
more.
amazing. It's dynamic. I want to ask you a question. Did you feel when this got successful that you had a Damocles over your head in terms of this design being so recognizable and potentially so constraining?
Not really.
I mean, it's funny because in retrospect, when you look back, we should have, right?
The crystal?
Well, no, we should have. We had such a successful, like miraculous first launch. Like the second album is always fraught.
Because you think about it, Bell and Ross, Seven Friday, even the Royal Oak to an extent, these iconic designs can certainly be hard to get out of the shadow of. But I feel that the evolution from this model to this shows what is so different about you guys. Instead of immediately thinking, okay, so what people loved was the avant-garde angular shape and brutalist echoes and shadows. You just built within
That's right.
the parameters that people seem to love.
Well, also from just a creative perspective, it would have been so boring just to do another dial. I mean, what's the point of that? Where's the effort? Where's the artistry?
They actually did. They did a malachite that I saw.
We did do that, but it was a different finish. But I think that so much of what's exciting to the two of us is creating, and we have so many ideas of how to continue this language in different sizes, in slightly different variations, because it's just. I know I always say this, and Alfred and I feel the same way about this, but if you have an opportunity to create something, you should try and make something new every time. And if you don't, you're being lazy, we think.
You guys are coming at it as collectors and enthusiasts primarily, and that's the fundamental difference here for me, listening to you speak. And we speak about other watches the whole time, and I know what you love, and I know you're contrarian. I know what you love and what you don't love, and you're doing what we all want to see. I think that's the crux of it. Sometimes brands, it feels like, well, they're a bit slow to evolve. It's years down the line before you see a change, and it's not necessarily run by the committee that are the buyers. Yeah. And that's the key difference, I think, listening to you guys.
And we're so used to those iterative changes that are agonizingly slow. Rolex getting it to titanium. It's like that one appears as a prototype on a yachtsman's wrist, disappears, and then comes up on the least popular of their sports models and then goes away. And it's this sort of game of cat and mouse. You know what we want. Won't you give us what we want? Whereas I feel that this is, and Justin, I need to ask you this. Like, are you getting this effect from where I'm sitting?
Yeah, totally.
Of the light just spearing through that crystal. You hadn't seen this in the metal.
And it's quite funny because I'm quite particular about the way I like to see. So a lot of brands use double reflective coating, like anti-reflective coating, which is quite modern. I'm not sure, on some really modern, I'm thinking some RWC Pilots watches, ceramic cases, it looks quite nice. But actually when it comes to dressier watches, I'm not absolutely sure. I'm also thinking about Laurent Ferrier, who sort of take the old Patek approach of not using that. So it's very much reflective. It's quite reflective, it's traditional. And I like the flatness on this in a certain way because you can see the dial very clearly. But then this gives me this depth, this 3D effect that's insatiable.
That's what I want to ask you. You're seeing this.
That's an amazing word.
I know. It sums up the man.
Let's have a glass of water for Mr. Hast, please.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's more hose him off.
Right.
But you're seeing this now for the first time live. Yeah. I could not believe my eyes in New York when I laid eyes on this watch. Yeah. Are you having, what are you noticing about it?
Mother of pearls, just to start with, I don't know what the need for the Tahitian element is. Clearly there's a reason you went for that, and I don't know why.
Because
the colour. Tahitian mother of pearls is particularly
because if you look at the way that interacts with the light,
it's almost spraying at you.
But also it's
coming from right to left.
It changes. Like it can be technicolor to being grey. It's a much more interactive.
Someone called it a hologram, and I like that.
It's got holographic qualities.
From a collector standpoint as well, I'm quite conscious about some dials being a little bit too loud to actually wear. I say that because I've got an Adventure in stone dial watch, which is a bit too much for me. It's just a bit too much sparkle. Whereas this, I can get behind because this is quite subdued when you want it to be. And it's quite loud when you want it to be as well. I bet in natural light, it really comes alive.
Sure.
But Look, I've seen that for the very first time ever today, and I know, Andrew, where you're leaning. I know where you're leaning.
I know.
I know where you're leaning.
Because, but that is not the one that has been on Justin Hast's breast since he walked in this room. So please, I will say to Phil, quickly introduce this piece.
And
Justin
I shouldn't be handling that.
With
touching your
enthusiasm.
Touching your wife publicly or your husband publicly.
This is a full Meteorite case and lugs and buckle watch
And dial.
that we auctioned off one very similar to this prototype for Phillips late last year. And this
What was
is
the result that achieved?
That was $35,000.
Australian dollars or?
US.
It's about 130 bucks. Yes.
You met the owner. You met the buyer.
No.
You haven't met.
But the buyer's in England.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Maybe we'll see them tomorrow night.
That would be amazing.
that would be
Did they know you were here?
I don't know.
Wow. Okay.
Phillips aren't giving that information away freely.
Yeah, that's right.
No.
So I did not. I think there's a misconception about Meteorite, or I think that perhaps there's a sense that we're conflating Meteorite dials with this watch, which we should not do. You've told me many times.
Well, as we discovered so hang on. So this is the production version of this watch. So there are some differences between this one and the prototype which we auctioned off. It's a slightly different size. It's 32 rather than 33.5. Faceted crystal. The finishing is darker. This is just sort of a strap that's there. We haven't quite figured out which strap exactly. But when we were going to do the watch all Meteorite with a Meteorite bracelet. But then as we discovered, Meteorite basically is similar in cost to gold. So just the materials alone for a bracelet would have been about 13 grand. So we're like, okay.
At cost?
Yeah, just cost, before we even started crafting it.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, look, maybe, selling a watch for whatever, 25, 30 grand, we're going to get there eventually, depending on what we make, but it may be a bit cheeky at this juncture in our where we are as a brand. So
where did you land on pricing then?
So this is going to be $9,700, and there'll be a run of 30.
Justin, I hand to you because
entirely different watch. Entirely different watch
different.
to me. Honestly,
Yeah.
I've not been able to take it off. Can I just put it back on just because? And
so interesting to me. He's just been fanatical about this since the minute he
mate,
met us.
honestly. And I've realised now through the collecting journey that when you react like this, and it's totally honest and authentic. I'm not just doing it because the boys, they're paying me a fortune to do this. But, they're not.
Not to mention all the cocaine.
I'm doing this because I've realised through the watch journey that you basically, if you don't react like this, if you don't have that reaction. Oh God, I'm just struggling to get that buckle through. There we go.
Because I'm going to tell you, brands, if you wonder whether Justin Hast will buy your watch, he needs to say this particular phrase. Oh, I'm in on this.
Oh, I'm in on this.
Because you just, he just walked off and I could just hear him muttering, oh, I'm in on this.
I'm in on
this.
If you put it on and it's immediately that visceral, it's like, I absolutely have to find a way to make this happen. And then the gears start going, pardon the pun. What can I, how much can I get away with at home? What can the accountant know and not know? What does the HMRC need to know and what do they not need to know? And so
it's a series of very complicated algorithms.
Very algorithms.
Right.
I'm the most simple
picturing
guy
Zach
alive.
Galifianakis with all the numbers going past his head.
It's like a beautiful mind. There's all these numbers going on.
And because, what's happened here for me is I'm thinking immediately of, I think of the Bulgari Octofinissimo because I actually commented on this strap being very similar in the suppleness, actually, of the way the head of the Octofinissimo sits. To me, this exaggerates the design by removing the bracelet. Don't get me wrong, I love the finishing on the bracelet, but actually the bracelet's not for me. This is far more for me. I'm immediately just looking at this and the whole visuals of what you guys, the window on the building there that was the inspiration, the whole design ethos comes alive in this for me. Super, super clean. It's darker, so it wears even smaller. I know we're at a shift of smaller cases. I'm not even that bought into the idea of smaller cases necessarily, but for me, this just feels comfortable. This just feels so much more comfortable. Look at the buckle on it as well. Now the buckle that to me is where we are. I know we all love the ellipse and the buckle on the ellipse echoing the case. That's what you guys have done here. I just think it's fantastic.
You have a theme for buckles, don't you?
I love
buckles. It's a lazy buckle.
It kills it for me.
Because you know what? When you're designing a watch, everything is an opportunity, right? So, and I think what happens, I see often a lot with watch brands, is they'll design their head and then they'll do the reflex strap, they'll do the reflex buckle, but all those are opportunities to continue the conversation you've started with the design of your watch.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why people don't do that.
And Meteorite, this is not Tahitian Meteorite.
Not Tahitian Meteorite.
Not Tahitian
It's regular.
Meteorite. sorry.
Regular out of space
It's
Meteorite.
regular out of space.
Australian outback,
Now,
mate.
we don't know why,
Yeah.
but the boys were saying that the price has gone through the roof in line with gold, and we don't really know why. So
No, it's not. It hasn't increased. It's just incredibly expensive.
Oh, incredibly expensive.
Yeah, it's
generally speaking.
Yeah.
And my point is that when you get a sliver of meteorite, because I saw a tube of meteorite at Le Fabrique de Temps, Louis Vuitton, and it truly is just a tube. And then they managed to slice off just a dial, however many microns of dial. This is a big chunk that's milled out of a much bigger piece.
Block, yeah.
So it's just a lot more material.
The
And
articulating
you
lugs.
made a good point, Alfred, about when they're making it, the waste.
Yeah, whatever you mill out is just wasted. You cannot recycle it, you cannot upcycle it.
remelt and reuse.
Yeah.
The subtlety on the lugs as well, that sort of very nice tactile feel.
It's like a jointed end piece.
It's beautiful,
isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me almost of mid-century sort of furniture design in the way that the rivets, each and every edge has been beautifully integrated.
But
It
also,
feels
if you
very-
think about it, all those beautiful hinged lugs
exactly.
from the 30s and 40s. I mean, that's one of the things that was kind of informing that a little bit too.
The strap, although it's not the one that you want, we talked about thinness and thickness and puffiness.
Sure.
I can't get my head around my Sombrands is still ruthlessly sticking with a puffy,
strap, yeah.
fat alligator, whatever it might be. It's the stuff you find from your grandpa's drawer that no one wants.
Because this is
Yeah.
the thing, is I feel like so much of what happens in design is habit, and it's inherited habit, and that's an inherited habit.
This is
and I don't understand why
phenomenal,
people
this
do that.
thinness and tuck to the feel. I know you're not keeping it, but I love how soft it is already.
Well,
This is,
whatever we end up will be that thin and that soft.
look at this. I don't know. I'm not sure this is
You
really
want some
giving
time?
you the,
You want some time alone with it?
Sorry. I'm just look at the sort of tactility, the suppleness. Now, this is what you fight for, right? After years of use, you fight for this in a strap.
And to put this in context, Justin has just released a 3-pack of straps with Moleskine. This is not a paid insert.
Absolutely.
Though you often do pay to insert. That's another story. No, this is not a paid insert.
Sorry, sir.
We can't help it. You are a strap freak.
I'm a strap freak.
You are so into the nuance of strap. And Moleskine, I have to say, they get everything right. Have you felt a Moleskine strap?
Not recently. I mean, perhaps we could have a couple of drinks and feel some straps together later.
Well, Justin has a 3-pack. You can feel it already.
For the first time ever, they've sold a 3-pack.
You are really into the detailed strap, and I know what you mean about this.
That's just, to me, if you feel a strap that just doesn't have that subtlety to it, that suppleness to it, it takes away the. Boys, honestly, I'm speechless. I really, and the way it's shaped as well. Of course, it has to be, but that is such a bizarre and beautiful thing to look at. To me, it's a whole different watch. It's much like the Royal Oak and the Offshore, except you've done the opposite. You've gone smaller instead of blown up. The Offshore was blown up. This has been blown down.
Well, the whole size issue. Insert jokes here. We've been discussing size. We've been having a size off for a while now because we are thinking we are going to make a slightly smaller version of the bracelet watch. But next year, we're going to launch the B2. So the B2 is going to be on a strap, carrying on this language, but in a different articulation. Both it's articulated differently in terms of the case shape and also in terms of the crystal. So we're going to do an asymmetrical crystal of some kind, but different than this one. And then the main thing is this concept that we call corrupted beauty. So what we're going to do is these B2 cases were made of precious metals, but they will be corrupted. Because traditionally when watch brands when watches are in precious gold or whatever happens, what have you, they're beautifully presented, polished, without flaws, but we want patina, flaws, degradation. Inclusions. So that's the idea behind this. So it's going to be a smaller watch on a strap, but this kind of beautiful, like how you talk about this, you want that patina on a strap. It's going to be like this thing has been exposed to the elements.
It's a little bit like the appeal of Arsham artworks in that sort of that degradation that is worked into a whole.
Yeah.
And perhaps the character can sometimes come from the flaw.
Yeah, that's for
so
sure.
you guys going to basically wear it for a few months, beat the hell out of it, and then sell it?
No, we're in the middle of it. We're in the middle of endless R&D to figure out how can you crop silver, gold, platinum in ways that's really interesting.
And I think, look, this is A completely spontaneous video, as Justin said, wonderfully gate crashed by Justin. But to me, we're bookending the two gentlemen here, but I could not disagree with you more in terms of the appeal of a Toledano and Chan watch. And I need to say that because I think many people are going to come to this watch for its bracelet. The thing about this bracelet that I'm boorish with people is that I say, come and look at how velvety the eye feel of this bracelet is, because it's horizontally brushed, which acts to fully diffuse the light. So it doesn't reflect or ping. It sort of soaks in and then shimmers across. It's incredible. And to me, it is more in the oeuvre of Piaget Polo 1979, which is a watch on a bracelet as opposed to a bracelet attached to a watch. Sure. And I feel that the head of this watch is actually more the diminished part of a bracelet than it is the thing that the bracelet is supporting. And when I interviewed Yves Piaget about this, he was adamant that no, this was a piece of male jewelry that happened to tell the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's more in that category of jewelry. And I think that is what appeals to me so much about it. However, I do take your point that with the smaller size and with this juxtaposition of, even like space material with organic leather material, it's pretty sexy stuff.
Boys, just a thought. Were you considering the idea of a dress watch versus a sports watch? In your mind, was there any...
Good question.
No, the thing for us is... Oh, sorry.
It's not even a sports watch, right? Just because it's on a bracelet doesn't make it a sports watch.
No.
In our opinion. And just because it's on a leather strap doesn't make it a dress watch.
Dress watch.
per se.
So what is this? What is this?
It's just, it's interesting because I also well, what's going on here? Interestingly enough, with that kind of paradigm shift we've seen happening this year, with people wearing smaller watches, with people wearing precious metal watches, the idea of what a dress watch is, I think it's sort of vanished a little bit. And so I will wear like a 70s Patek that was designed for dress, for evening wear, but jeans and t-shirt kind of situation. Yeah. So when for the B2 and even for this one, we're not even thinking about dress versus sports or anything. We're just thinking about something beautiful to wear.
And your sparring partner, Mr. Nouveau,
that's right,
in New York City, is highly culpable here because he never dresses well or to any standard.
I'm happy to hear you say that, man.
Hi, Mike. No, but his whole preserve is dress watches, jewelry watches, tiny watches, and yet he's wearing them with a leather jacket, a cap with some pithy slogan, not a pig. But I feel that it's a post-pandemic thing as well.
Also, what's happened, I think, in this last year, which is really extraordinary, is I feel like so many ideas of what watches are supposed to be have changed. Like the idea of smaller watches, the dress watches, the idea of bizarre shaped watches, all this stuff. The horizon has expanded. And people aren't so segregated anymore on how this has to be worn here, this has to be worn there. In part, maybe the pandemic helped that. And I really hope, look, who knows? I know watches are cyclical and who knows, maybe in 5 years' time, it's all be back to like the Rolex sub. But it's so lovely, I think, to be able to have so many different meals to eat now. Like where it was just one, I felt like for the last 10 years, it was just bloody like one, where everyone was eating hamburgers. For 10 years.
We won't go, you call it cosplay, and I am never going to. That is the best summary of watch styles that are just echoing and echoing and echoing through all the brands. And I feel that sums it up beautifully. There's two questions that are uncomfortable for you, gentlemen. Okay? Accessibility and pricing.
Sure.
We're going to go straight into the fire on this, Justin, and I want you to hold, you've been lavish in your praise.
I thought we were friends.
Lavish in your praise.
No.
Exactly. I've got an allocation. Shut up. Accessibility. Will this brand ever be accessible and available apart from to those people who happen to be switched on to Time+Tide's weekly newsletter and Toledano and Chan's mailing list and Instagram for that 18 seconds when the watch drops? What are you going to do about accessibility so that the 10, 15, 20, 100,000 people that watch this video can feel a part of what's happening here?
We will offer T-shirts. And
throw them to the masses.
Well, look... I guess, feel free to chime in, man, but I guess we started off, we had no idea what the reaction would be. We were making this thing for ourselves, and we still are making these things for ourselves and hope that other people like them. But we're pretty cautious in terms of making massive numbers of them because honestly, we're still kind of pinching ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Like the success is so unexpected.
Let's put a fine point on it. 175 watches.
Yeah.
One unique piece.
No, 30.
Oh, 30. There will be 30 of these,
Yeah,
but there's
30.
one of these in existence that's a unique piece, slightly small, slightly larger. And the first run of these is
200.
So we're talking less than 400 watches in total.
I know.
So, I mean, if there are 10,000 people watching,
Right.
I'm desperately sorry to be teasing and titillating, but it's a question that every time I talk about TNC, there are this bitter and twisted people who say,
Sure.
can we talk about a watch that is going to become part of my life?
And I totally understand that. I guess to those people, I would say, please have patience. We're new. We are cautious. We are overwhelmed with gratitude at the attention. But we the worst thing in the world for us would be to make too many and then have them sitting around. Like financially, we don't have the ability to make like 1,000 of them.
And also, these gentlemen started in May. So, as you say, and every time I talk to you about a new run, you're like, we're going to go 200. It's just, I think we might have overshot.
I know, because we're basically, we're always shitting our pants. Like, I mean, I was saying we were having this conversation a couple of weeks ago, like, oh, maybe we should have made more.
Yeah. Justin, what do you think?
At the same time, this bracelet, you've been raving about the bracelet, it's hard to make. It's not.
How do you make it? I've never asked that question. How do you get this velvety shine?
It's a partially automatic, partially handmade kind of process. I mean, everything is CNC'd out, but then there's a technician pressing the metal against a sanding machine to get the right amount of brushing. If they do it for too hard, it will be too much metal is gone, and then that link is no good anymore. So it's a partially labor intensive process.
I mean, funnily enough, when we first started doing it, the factory, they had an MOQ, minimum order quantity, and they said, can we make less because it's such a pain to make. I mean, I don't know how often.
We're not forcing you upwards, we're forcing you downwards.
Yeah, exactly. And then when we did the second run, they were like, okay, now we know what a nightmare this is. We're going to charge you much more.
And we can see you've had some success with it. Have you ever seen the Girard-Perregaux casquette, the original bracelet that came on those? No. Have you ever handled one of those? No. Quite interesting, not dissimilar. I had one for a short period of time, but you're right, Andrew. And actually, it's funny, when you're wearing it, you can see how that really does come alive in a beautiful way. And also quite a subtle way. Some bracelets are a bit too loud for me personally, the facets, the light that comes off them is just a bit too showy, whereas that's quite constrained.
I think it's that if you've ever seen a Vacheron, the new 222 in gold, it has this little halo and everything's very muted. And it's somehow the volume is turned down through the brushing of that.
There's not
gold.
a lot of shine on that watch.
Not at all.
I think
it's
one of the things
very sexy for that reason.
Just to talk about the finishing, I think one of the things that modern watches do is they're always too shiny.
Yes.
I find most of the time. In particular, the bracelet, exactly what you're talking about, and it's just too.
I found the Royal Oak, calling it out. I found the Royal Oak bracelet just too loud for me.
Sure.
Personally, I had it off for a bit, and amazing, but I was like, geez, no one ever talked about this.
Right.
It talks about the icon that it is, but no one said, hey, you're going to feel like when it's just popping out the cuff, it's like really quite light and bright and eye-catching.
It's a bit of a disco ball.
It is a bit of a disco ball.
And then when I wore modern Rolexes, I always find, God, the strap is the bracelet is so shiny. I don't like it. So in a way, this is a more vintage approach for sure.
We've talked about the Octo Finissimo probably too much today, but for some reason I'm thinking back to that. Do you remember that rose gold that they did?
Yes.
That matte rose gold, sandblasted rose gold.
Lovely.
That was interesting because it was so stealthy, so sexy. Didn't last long, discontinued quite quickly.
Yeah.
Just an interesting
it was a scratch
execution.
magnet. Funny fact, it was super scratchy.
I've seen the bracelet underneath
here.
this. On some people's, it got really scratched.
Really scratched.
Anyway.
Yeah. So getting into those kind of stories, I love hearing this from you, Alfred, because you were sort of tasked with, feels like, I have a vision, and throws it down from a mountaintop, and you're just like, what?
Well, look, to be fair, I mean, just on the creative process, the vision is, it's a really amazing collaborative process, but all the genius, the details, the genius of all, like the hands, all that stuff, that's all Alfred.
Tell me about some other things you overcame to make this watch, because it is a watch that gives so much on the wrist in terms of it's surprising you with its reactivity to things and its character. Certainly this one in particular, I think I'm most excited about owning this and discovering, because Phil was saying, he's sitting opposite me the first time I wore it and saying, I've never seen this in someone else. And you were just captivated. You weren't even listening to me because you were saying...
Well, it's very boring.
That's true. They give a lot, but what other challenges have you overcome and what are the things you're most proud of in terms of the nuances?
Especially for the new one, the MOP, the crystal is particularly difficult. I think we went through iterations and went through different suppliers to get the right one with the right amount of volume and
it took us about 5 months to get that thing sorted out.
Because it isn't sort of a sheared crystal with sharp edges. It also has is there a slight sort of polish to the edges, or is it really sharp?
It's not really sharp.
No, it's not.
It's got to be rounded off. Otherwise, it's sharp as a knife. I mean, glass.
Wow. Yeah,
if you just leave it as a crisp edge, I think it'll cut through.
Because when you see the macros, like right here,
it's slightly rounded.
Yes.
It has to be slightly rounded. Yeah.
So what were the challenges of getting? Because it's quite fragile as well, isn't it, in terms of shaping sapphire?
It could be chipped during the manufacturing process. I think they were easy to chip. That's why when they were polishing it, it took some time. But now that it's rounded off mildly on the edges, I think it's pretty cool that it's got almost like a halo ring on the edge as well.
Yeah, amazing. Well, this is one watch that you truly have to. I mean, that's why I was curious about your reaction.
Do you know what's just coming to mind now is that there was an agreement amongst the watch world for many, many years that a stone dial and a ceramic case was going to be expensive. That was just an agreement everyone had.
Yes. Like a tourbillon has to be more than 40,000
And I feel
US
like you
dollars.
guys have come in and really changed that
Turn
all
the
up.
tables.
Yeah, like a stone
And then
dial.
Dennison came and went, well, screwed Toledano Chan.
I mean, look, it's very interesting what you're saying, man, because as you say, there were signifiers in the watch world that meant this is an expensive watch. And as you say, for years, lapis, dial, or malachite dial, whatever it was, that meant it was a lot of money. And Dennison we changed it. We were the first, I think, micro brand or brand really to do a relatively affordable lapis dial, but Dennison has just
bottomed it out.
And what's happened is that now those things which represented luxury are now commodities, right? Yep. So what really counts now is design and creativity. Those are the real signifiers, I think, of luxury now.
I want to get into my other difficult topic, pricing. Not because there are watches that have been released this week that have an avalanche of pricing queries and complaints. I just want to, so we have 4,000, we have 5,700, we have 9,700. Two questions. One, is this a stairs that goes to infinity? Are we going to? Is the 10th one going to be worth $1 million? I mean, no. Tell us about the pricing strategy, because I want to just put it out there, and I want to talk directly to the people that talk about Toledano and Chan pricing in a negative or a questioning way, which is that if there is nothing more true in a capitalist economy than that the market sets the price. And if this watch was priced at 4,000, and if the cheapest one you can get on the secondary market is 7,000, that watch was underpriced, or that watch was fairly priced and the demand is very high. So I think that kind of extinguishes some of the subjective complaints about it. But tell me about the pricing difference between these two and these two, and then what comes next.
Okay. Yeah, I know you're going to be quiet on this one. Well, there's a couple of things. One is that on the lapis watch, I think we may have underpriced it a little bit in terms of bearing in mind the cost to us, etc. But then when it came...
Why did you do that? Just lack of confidence?
Honestly, well, because...
Not this businessman.
Yeah, because we're shit businessmen, basically. That's number one. But also, I feel like you look at the way watches are priced now, and it just seems to be untethered to reality.
Yes.
And we wanted to make something that was beautiful and interesting and as perfect as we could get it, but still look, I know $4,000 is a shitload of money, and it is. So that was that cost. Then this one, 5,700, well, a bunch of reasons. Everything is more expensive. The movement's more expensive.
What is the movement?
Salita SW100. But now that's more expensive. We re-engineered the bracelet with a better clasp. Now that's more expensive to make. The factory's now charging us more because, as Alfred said, they've seen that it's a success and it's a pain in the ass to make. The crystal took a long time and is expensive to develop and to make. And MOP is actually a little bit more than lapis. So there's a bunch of myriad reasons. But I understand it's a lot of money. But, we're trying to make the best thing we can.
And that's irrelevant of the country of origin, I think. We're making the best that we can make in any place. It doesn't matter whether it's China or Switzerland or Japan.
Which does come up too. Manufactured in China, proudly stated on the spec sheet, which is something that I welcome.
Yeah.
Because
and
there are dirty secrets.
The fact that we can manufacture this in China doesn't mean it's cheaper than it is made in Switzerland or whatnot.
Well, what it does mean is what it means is it's cheaper for the end user, but it doesn't mean there's a difference in quality necessarily.
And the point of this was not to have you apologize for your pricing, which is the tone. I object to this tone. Justin, do you want to jump in on this? Because I feel that this was an example of a watch that was extraordinary value. I mean, I know I'm going to sound biased and I'm going to sound like I'm in with these guys and that there's some vested interest. But no, truly, when this watch was offered to me at $4,000 US, it just felt like a deal as well. But do you relate to the commenters when I suppose with every new brand, there's a sense of where do you pitch your pricing when you have no benchmark, you've no previous watches? Like, what's your comment on this whole subject?
I don't have a great deal to add really, other than the sense that, it's going to be very subjective to the individual involved, I think, because we all have different parameters internally about what feels acceptable and what doesn't. To me, this looking at the product, handling the product, it feels like it offers real value. Price is what you pay, value is what they get, as they say. And to me, in the hand, visually, aesthetically, the volumes involved, all is quite appealing, coming together to make 4,000-ish for that first one, really appealing. I think as well, from the brand perspective, you had no background, you had no back catalogue, there was no history there for people to buy into. And let's not forget that in the watch world, we do think about brand first, probably, when we think about putting money down on the table. So you didn't have that to trade off. So really it was product and it was your personal reputations, I'd say, that people were trading more on.
Yes.
And actually, as a result, that felt really quite reasonable.
And as a collector's perspective, you do walk away with this and have a private moment muttering, I'm all in. This appeals to collectors for those reasons you broke down before.
One thing I would add about the price is that for us, when we increase the price, there is a reason for it. That's something we've talked about a lot. So the Meteorite is $9,700, which is a lot of money, but the material is extraordinarily expensive. So we want to be able to justify why things cost more. We're not going to, we would never have made the same watch with just a different dial and said, this is now $5,500, because it wouldn't be fair to
So we're at a position now where the industry is seemingly going endlessly up.
Yeah.
And they're focused more and more on those very small group of collectors and owners at a very, very high price point.
Yeah.
And that's concerning. And I would say, I don't want to speak for Andrew here, but we've been in the industry for a while now, and I still struggle to know where the value is actually being added what is the cost of a movement? Sure. Okay, Solita, ETA, people do have ideas in their mind about what the raw figure is, but you start going up the scale a little bit, and it's actually very difficult to know what the cost of these different things actually is. It's really hard to understand what a good chronograph. Okay, they developed it in-house, fine. So what does that mean for each of these watches? Okay, their marketing spend might be this. It's really hard to quantify. It's actually almost impossible to understand.
I mean, it's a very interesting question, because when you look at watches that are $400,000 or $500,000, I think what's the cost of that to make, really? And what's the markup? It's interesting.
And even the cost to make, that might have been bought in for many, many years of innovation, lots of investment in those decades before, because the brand might be bloody 50 years old or older, 260
Well, that's
years
the other thing, that when people get upset about the price, they also don't think about the fact that Alfred and I have been basically working on this for 4 or 5 years now.
For no wage.
And we've not taken a cent. There's the R&D, there's the development, there's our time. So these are all business costs that people don't think about.
You've sold these watches, so that means that there was something that was right about the pricing.
That's right.
If you hadn't sold them, then we can start talking about what may or may not be negative. And I think people commenting out there always, it doesn't have to be for everyone. For Christ's sakes, art and design is for certain people. It's not for everybody, and that's okay as well. We know not every watch is for us, and if it's too expensive, then it's too expensive for you. That's fine.
But I do find in this world of subjectivity, which doesn't offer us really many things to hold on to, there is the secondary pricing. That reflects, did this deliver the value that you paid a price for? And when there's very few on the secondary market, and when they're there at an appreciated price, and you don't see many going anywhere near retail, then I think that is at least some objective measure that you're doing things right. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking us through this. It is a short history of Toledano and Chan, but it's a little longer than I think most people expected.
Sure.
The future is exciting. I think the amount, as we said before, it was a brilliant comment, Justin. The slow iterative process of loving a watch brand and seeing them slowly ache towards a steel 202 with a blue dial that everyone wants. You know, these are things that people are just like, oh, yeah. Thank God. It's wonderful to have this completely dynamic, sort of wildly unpredictable journey in such a short time to go on. I'm loving it, gents.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for having us. And that was, I found that a really invigorating conversation, honestly. That was great.
Now we're going to make another video about a watch that's coming out later this year. So by the end of 2025, there'll be 2 videos to watch, but only one until then, okay? We'll see you on the next one.